$13.76. That is the price of gold. Many people forget that gold was just $400 an ounce 5 years ago. Remember, gold has almost no actual utility, right? Can't do much with gold, right? A little bit of semiconductors, dental work. People buy gold because they're afraid. It's a de facto fiat currency in some cases, right? And what else people are doing is getting out of many U.S. stocks. Look at this. According to ICI, the investment company institute, at the end of the week ended 10/6, we had about $1.2 billion in domestic stock inflows. About $1.2 billion in dollars came into U.S. stocks. The problem is that $5.5 billion left. Went around the world, right? China, India, Brazil, other emerging markets, getting huge inflows while money is being pulled out of domestic stock funds. All right, like I said, the numbers are not pretty, but there is some good news. Economic growth can cure a lot of what ails us. If we can get the economy growing again, many of those numbers that we just talked about will and can turn around. Question is, how do we do that? Peter Schiff, President and Chief Global Strategist for Euro-Pacific Capital, is also the author of this book, How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes. Peter, we got the crash part right. Let's find some solutions to those big numbers I just showed. I'm not trying to scare everybody. It's the reality, right?
Well, reality is very scary, unfortunately. And, you know, we're not going to have any economic growth at all in this country until the government stops stimulating. It's the stimulus that's the problem. And, of course, before we can have real growth, we have to repair the damage done by previous stimulus. The damage is we borrow too much, we spend too much, we don't save enough, we don't produce enough. We have to transition back to a legitimate economy that's led by underconsumption, savings, capital investment, production, and there's going to be some pain in the transition process. But unfortunately, our leaders don't want the pain. They'd rather shoot us up with more stimulus, and we are experiencing the results. And unfortunately, the real economic crisis is coming. It wasn't in 2008, but it might happen in 2011. But it's going to be a currency crisis.
Yeah, I'm not just going to put it all on the party in power, though. Listen, we showed our viewers this yesterday, Peter. From '02 to '06, right, American household debt grew double digits. Every year we are adding 10, 11, 12% to our household debt levels. That's not any political party's fault.
Well, of course, both parties, they're both in power. Sure, Obama inherited a bad situation from Bush and proceeded to make it worse. But when I wrote my original book, Crash Proof, you know, how to profit from the coming economic collapse, I wrote it in 2006. My initial criticism was aimed at President Bush, at the Republicans and Democrats in Congress, and chiefly at the Federal Reserve, at Chairman Greenspan and then Ben Bernanke. But they are repeating all the problems that led me to write that book. And if you remember from that original book, the crash that I wrote about is not the one that we already had, but the one that we're about to have. I talked about the collapse of the housing market and the greatest recession since the Great Depression that would hit. But what I said, the real crisis was going to come as a result of the government's cure, that we wouldn't die from the disease, but the cure. It's the stimulus that's the problem. It's all this money printing. Yes, you're seeing it in gold, and you said earlier, gold has no value. It is money. It is a store of savings. If people don't want to spend their money, if they want to save it, they can't hold dollars. They have to hold gold. Gold can preserve your wealth. But the fact that gold prices are rising, every commodity on this earth that is either mined or grown or is rising in price. The dollar is at record lows today against the Australian dollar, against the Singapore dollar, against the Swiss franc, and it's going to go a lot lower because of what the government is doing. And this is bankrupting America. It is forcing every American citizen to take a pay cut, and all these goods that we're importing, they're all going to get more expensive because of a diminished dollar.
Well, okay, listen, three of those top numbers that we showed at the beginning of the program, there are four figures. Three are basically related, right? We know the president owes a debt to the unions, right? We've got to get manufacturing jobs back in this country. There's two ways to do that, right? You can either impose tariffs, like maybe the Senate will do through this currency, you know, Bash China Act they're thinking about passing, which we learned from Smoot-Hawley in 30 probably won't work too much. But if you don't do the tariffs, right, in the trade war, then what you can do is drive the value of the currency down to make our products so cheap that we can sell them. I'm not saying it's the right way, but don't
that's
you
not
agree
going to work.
The strategy?
But what products are you talking about? See, what we really need is to regain a manufacturing industry. If you drive the dollar down, we're just going to have to pay more for what we import because we don't have the industrial capacity to produce all these goods anymore.
I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying there's got to be a strategy. What do we have, right? Trade war or drive the dollar down? You talked about the Fed printing money.
We can't win a trade war, and driving the dollar down is committing suicide. What we need to do is deregulate this economy, reduce all the burdensome and costly regulations, reduce taxes on business, which means cutting government spending, so that we can be competitive again, so that we can rebuild our manufacturing sector, so we can save money to make the investments that we need to retool. We've got to go back to work, and I'm talking real work, not this funny, you know, the service jobs or government jobs. Yeah. We need to roll up our sleeves and get back to work.
I don't disagree. We are a nation of overconsumption. Fair enough? 75% of our economy is consumer spending, right? Everybody wants cheap stuff at the big box stores, but nobody wants cheap wages. We just talked about that yesterday with Kyle Bass, right?
Well,
there's the problem.
Yeah, you don't need cheap wages if you have a lot of capital. See, at one point in America, we paid the highest wages in the world, yet we exported to everybody because we had the smallest government in the world.
And the most productive workers.
Yes, they were productive because they had capital, and they had capital because we had an economy that generated savings. We didn't have a lot of government. So you can have big government or you can have a strong economy. You can't have both. If you want high wages, then you need government to be small. You need businesses to be competitive, which means instead of adding regulations, we should be repealing the regulations that exist. The government has undermined our productive capacity. That's why the jobs have gone, and the reason that the economy keeps getting worse is the government keeps repeating the mistakes.
You know, but we hear so much from other sides, mostly on the left, right? I mean, just peruse some of these unions' websites. You know, I was shocked to learn that Wall Street banks are responsible for every problem we have in America.
Well, the reason that Wall Street...
But that's what the White House, in large part, is listening to.
Well, of course, but the reason, again, the reason Wall Street made so many mistakes is because they were liquored up on government alcohol. You've got to understand the source of the problems. It's the Federal Reserve. It's the Congress for subsidizing and guaranteeing debts that in a free market never would have been made. Yes, the unions have an agenda. Sure, you know, in some cases, they're driving wages artificially high. We need wages to be set in the marketplace. Now, unfortunately, wages in America have to come down now because we don't have the capital to support high wages. And we have all this government. So we're going to have to suffer falling wages, but that's not a good thing. No one should celebrate that. That's the unfortunate consequences of bad policies. But we have to stop those bad policies because if we continue them, wages are going to go down even more. And it's not really nominally. It's in real terms. As the dollar goes down, everybody's wages are going to be worth less. So the price is going to go up. People are going to be shocked in a year or two how much it costs at the grocery store to buy food. If people thought gas was expensive at $4 a gallon, wait till it's 10. Wait till it's higher.
I agree with you on that, Peter. I've been the only one out there for, you know, I think, in my industry, screaming about the coming inflation. No one seems to care. Maybe I read too much history. Leave us with some good news. Right?
Well, the good news. Well,
Give
the good news is
good news, Peter. Before we end this interview, I gotta have.
Well, the good news is I can help. I mean, if you want to preserve your wealth,
I can help. Create a job because the guy running for the governorship of your state kind of stumbled through a question on that one.
Well, we're not going to create any jobs. What I can do is help people preserve wealth right now by getting their money out of dollars, by buying gold, by buying foreign stocks. I'm trying to preserve people's wealth and help them avoid the inflation tax because it's going to decimate most Americans. Americans that are foolish enough to leave their money in dollars, buying U.S. treasuries, buying corporate immunity bonds in this country, are going to get wiped out. People have to take action now to preserve their wealth by moving it abroad, by accessing foreign stocks and bonds, by buying gold and silver. I mean, these prices, I think, are just going to go higher and higher and higher.
$13.79 is a bargain for gold.
Absolutely. Buy it.
That's $1,379 an ounce. It was $400 5 years ago.
Yes, and I was buying it 5 years ago. I was buying it at $250 10 years ago.
Why don't you sell it to people that want to buy it at $13.79?
I'm not selling them my gold. I'm still buying. I'm working as a dealer. I go and buy it in the market and resell it to clients. The price, I think, is going to go up because it's not gold going up. It's just the dollar losing value. And the more we print, the more value they're going to lose. That's what quantitative easing is. It's printing money. So money loses value. So get rid of it before it does.
And I meant running for Senate, not governor of your fine state, though, like Connecticut.
Well, I'm not running for Senate either anymore.
I was talking about Blumenthal when he was asked how to create a job, and he kind of gave a bizarre...
Well, he has no idea because he's never created one. I mean,
the only person have maps.
The only person he's ever employed is a housekeeper, and his wife pays for that.
Peter Schiff.
Or maybe a chauffeur that he got from the state.
Peter Schiff, Euro Pacific Capital, author, and generally just a fired-up guy. We appreciate you coming on, Peter.